anytime you're working with listing or buying, representing a buyer for a property that is in an HOA, there are documents that are required under the disclosure section in paragraph 7 of the REPSI that are provided to the buyer by the seller. The seller should provide a copy of the covenants, codes, and restrictions, or CCRs, that have been recorded with the HOA. There may not be an active HOA, but there may actually be CC&Rs recorded on the neighborhood. I was surprised to find that my neighborhood that incorporated the 1960s did have a single-page long copy of covenants, codes, and restrictions that dated from the early 1960s. It was a very blurry copy, but it existed. A copy of any HOA rules and bylaws should be provided as well. The rules governing the HOA and most common questions have to do with questions such as pets, visitors, long-term, short-term rentals. All those types of rules should be provided, as well as the bylaws that govern the HOA. Financial documents for the HOA. We should be receiving a copy of the annual budget of the HOA. If possible, it's also valuable to get a copy of the profit and loss statement, as well as the current balance of their operating and reserve funds to make sure that the HOA is in good, sound financial standing. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have recently updated their requirements for lending for conventional loans on buildings with an HOA, especially condos, to make sure that as part of the loan application process, that the financial status of the HOA is reviewed by the lender to determine that it is in strong, sound financial standing. Copies of the HOA board meeting minutes should be provided. This is also important if you are looking for any signs of any statements regarding potential upcoming litigation by the HOA or upcoming special assessments by the HOA to cover costs of maintenance or other costs that would require, our next statement here, any information regarding special assessments. If a special assessment already exists against the building, then also determining with the seller agent what the seller's intention is or plans are for paying off the special assessment at settlement, or if the buyer will be assuming the role of completing payment of the special assessment. Special assessments can be paid as a one-time payment or may be financed through the HOA. Also, any information regarding transfer fees or reinvestment fees. Oftentimes, these two fees are not the same thing and both are charged. Transfer fees are any fees required to establish the buyer as the new member of the HOA and typically are anywhere from $50 to $250 and pay for the processing of their new HOA membership. Reinvestment fees are fees that are paid at closing that go into the operating and reserve fund for the HOA and are set by the HOA and vary anywhere from a dollar amount to a percentage of the purchase price up to 0.5% of purchase price. Utah does limit the amount that can be charged in reinvestment fees, but given that they can go up to 0.5 percentage point of the purchase price of the property, buyers need to be aware of the reinvestment fee up front, and then it can be a closing cost. Some HOAs allow the seller to cover that as part of any kind of concession at closing. Some HOAs do not. That will be explained in the covenants, codes, and restrictions that are there. These documents are to be provided by the HOA in a timely and reasonable manner. And there is, in fact, a form that our transaction coordinator or you would be responsible for sending out to the HOA as if the HOA has been slow in providing these documents. It's best from a listing agent's perspective to get these documents prior to the listing going live, and it has become a practice for many agents and is a good, wise practice to post those on the MLS with the listing so that buyers can have access to those prior to making an offer, making them aware, especially of transfer or reinvestment fees or any other rules or requirements that they may need to be aware of that could impact their decision to make an offer on the property or their ability to follow through and complete the process of purchasing the property. All of these are required under paragraph 7 and must be provided within the guidelines or the deadlines of the seller disclosure deadlines as negotiated in the REPC. So having them on the MLS is a good place to have those available to anyone interested in the property.